going at double speaks. So Collin, you're here. You're running for CD2 for Congress. Tell us kind of a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself before we really get into the meat of this. What kind of got you running? What made you like, I'm filing, I'm gonna run? And whereabouts are you at? I wasn't sure where you're living at in the state either.
Okay, yes. Thank you guys for having me here, by the way. My name is Collin Carlson. I'm in Marysville, Washington at the moment. I've been in Bellingham, Washington for the last 3 years, or last 4 years, finishing up my degree at Western Washington University in history, specifically with an emphasis on American history and English. So a little bit of background about me, what got me into this election and what got me running, basically. I am one of those people who became really infatuated with the Bernie Sanders campaign, mainly because I've always had an interest in politics, but I've had more of an interest in truth than I've had an interest in politics. So, the big examples that you can give there is, wasn't particularly, though I was incredibly young, was not infatuated with the George Bush era because there was a lot of politics, not a lot of truth. And same, I was excited initially about the Obama campaigns because I thought there was going to be a lot of truth exposed, but it unfortunately turned out to be a lot of politics again. And so Bernie was the first politician who ever came out and spoke truth to politics. I know a lot of people are talking a lot about that, but the truth of the matter of money is corrupting our politics. That's just the truth of it that we've seen for the last 40 years. No politics about it. He went right out and said it. Medicare for all, or some sort of single payer healthcare system, is the cure to a lot of the ailments that we're seeing in American society right now. That's just the truth. He had no politics about it. He went right out and said it. And it's really, really nice when you have a politician who, especially in America, where a lot of the politicians who are talking about the truth don't get a lot of corporate media attention. So I understand why for the last 40 years, a lot of the truth wasn't talked about because, you had the media sort of in on this whole system of politics, as we would call it. And so it was nice to see somebody who told the truth, because now, especially going forward, you have a marker to base every other politician against. If you're talking to a politician and he's not down for a single payer healthcare system and he's not down for free tuition college, those are two major aspects that we need to have by the end of this just century, by the end of this, decade, not century. If we really want to be a competitive, developed country, if we want to be a competitive country, we need tuition-free college, pre-K through PhD. We need a single-payer healthcare program to take care of everybody at no cost to people. Because right now, those are the two reasons most people are going into bankruptcy. And so talk about trying to get ahead, these people can't even stay alive. That is absolutely ridiculous, especially for a country that's as rich as we are. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run. Bernie got me onto the truth. And then you just do a little bit more digging. Yeah, thank you. But then you do a little bit more digging and you realize that there's actually a lot that we can do. There is a lot that we can do. And so after researching kind of what I feel was necessary to become these, I don't want to say superpower because I'm not militaristic. I don't really believe that there is a country that we need to be invading. In fact, I think there are no countries we need to be invading. Not even, the Russia or the Iran or any of those places that people keep trying to push more weapons into. But we have a lot of money. We have a $4 trillion budget. And when we use it well, and we use it wisely, I mean, we really can create, what would you say? We can create the pinnacle of human civilization right here. And America is one of those countries that is, right now at this point in history, really unique because basically, to make it in a colloquial, if America can figure its crap out, if we can sort ourselves out, the world will fall in line. Because as we've seen right now, the world is kind of ahead of us. The world is already ready to tackle climate change. They already have single-payer healthcare systems. They already have universal education, pre-K through PhD, through college. They're already ahead of where we are. We've been falling behind, and a lot of people kind of wonder why we're falling behind in math. We're falling behind in literacy. By the way, our literacy is the worst in the industrialized world. And I mean, it's getting really, really bad. We're getting to like 37, And there's only 33 technically major industrialized countries. So, I mean, we're really falling off the wayside. And when we look at why we're falling so far behind, I mean, the correlation between money and politics and the state of the union is just, I mean, it's remarkable. It's almost parallel with each other. The more money that we pump into politics, the more money that we pump into, you know, the media mainstream to make sure that we stay divided, the less successful our country becomes. The worse our literacy drops, the worse our education system drops, the worse our healthcare drops. And so now you're at a place, it's 40 years later, this whole meltdown started, I guess about the Nixon era, but 1978 is always the date that I kind of go to, and I talk about it in my videos as well. 1978 is basically when all of this started happening, when we started cutting taxes for the wealthy. That's one of the big things too. A lot of people obfuscate that it's, you know, it's black, white, it's gay, straight, all this kind of stuff. But it really all started when we started giving tax cuts to the wealthy, which, by the way, over the course of the 40 years since we've been doing this little trickle-down economics experiment, the top 1% has seen over a 50% decrease in taxes, 50% tax cut. Middle and lower class families have not seen that. It's not even been 1%, 2%, anything that you can think of. Lower middle class families have actually seen an increase in taxes. And the example that I give in my video, obviously, is stupid things like a tax on tips. We never had tax on tips until like the late 90s, when we started deregulating Wall Street, or basically started expanding tax cuts for corporations, started expanding tax cuts for the wealthy. That money, when you cut taxes from any entity, that money can't go away. They have to come up with the funds, because a lot of the funds or a lot of the things our taxes go to are things like Social Security, healthcare, things along those lines. So when you cut it from one area, it has to come from somewhere. So we started seeing stupid taxes like tax on tips, which, by the way, if we got rid of that, that's over, I think, about 50% of wage earners in service industries will see a $10,000 increase in their annual wages. That's not a joke. Wow. It's not some small number of money. That tax on tips and other taxes, I'm not just picking on tax on tips, but other small taxes like that have been crippling lower middle class families for a long time. And so when you realize that, and you realize, and you come up with a plan that can actually, what I would say my purpose is to bring out the potential in people in general, because I'm taking all the investments that we have in our budget, and instead of investing in the military and Wall Street, I'm investing in things that people use every day. We're going to have a single payer healthcare system. We're going to have tuition-free college, pre-K through PhD. And I go a little bit more extreme as well. And I have economic incentives for each thing. So we have economic incentives if you graduate with an English degree. Let's say English degree is something that we don't need too much of. So the incentive is just a $2,000 grant, basically, for graduating with an English degree. Whereas we have mechanics, engineers, and doctors that we really, really need. So we raise the incentive there to $10,000. So if you get your degree in a more needed field, your incentive is larger. So it'll be $10,000. But we really do want to push people and incentivize education. We're doing the literal opposite of that right now, where if you want an education, you really have to work for it. Right. And you take this idea and you put it into everything. And our plan describes it all. We're going to have the Department of Communication, which is going to make sure that all American buildings and facilities have Wi-Fi, basically, high stream Wi-Fi, because it's going to be a federal program that's going to do this. So obviously the job of the federal program is to make sure that we have the highest quality, whatever it is, healthcare, education, in this case, internet and communication for all people. And we've done this before. It used to be back in the day, all you had to do was buy a TV and you had cable with the TV already. When you would buy a phone, you would just buy the phone, and then the phone service would be with it. You could just call any number that you wanted. We started not doing that. We started breaking it into these phone services, and we started privatizing it, once again, around the 1978 and past that. So we apply this to much other things, transportation. I talk a lot about public housing, where I think that we literally need $100 billion a year annually will be invested into public housing and low-income housing. Can't stress the low-income housing enough. right now, so if you're Washington State, you know the Seattle crisis happening right now, where most of the people now who work in Seattle do not live in Seattle, could not afford Seattle, even if they had 3 jobs. It's ridiculous. We're seeing studio apartments on sale for $1,500 or something along those lines, $1,850 for a studio apartment, which is basically one room. It's just one room in a building. That's what you get. Well, those prices are starting to go up and it's starting to be insane. So that's what we use our federal budget for. And that's what I think our federal government is for. I think our federal government is to tap into the potential of its population by providing resources needed to make those people excellent, to make them educated, to make them knowledgeable, to make them have a place to stay if things go bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you. That was great. It was wonderful. So I know, Courtney, are you ready with your list to go through?
Yes, I am.
All right. So we talked about this before, socialized versus privatized.
All right. Would you guys mind, excuse me for a second? So I can grab some.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Yep.
All right. Back in 15. All right.
Oh, those were seconds. Good.
Yes. Sorry. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
We'll hang out. We really will.
Yeah.
All right. So
go ahead, Court.
some of this list you've already touched on, and having read through your platform on your website, I know some of the answers. So I might acknowledge that those ones, you know, and so then just as we discuss, simple yes or no or privatize, socialize answers, and then I have some questions based on what I saw on. It will transition to what I saw on your website that I think are fascinating ideas.
Yeah.
So prisons, schools, healthcare, and postal service. I know that you are about socialized versions of those. Social Security.
Can I go into Social Security for a little bit?
Well, let's follow up with it, but do you want to maintain it as a socialized, or do you want it to be a privatized service?
Social Security again, sorry?
Yes.
Oh my God, no, that is not privatized.
Okay. Foster care?
Yeah, I don't think foster care, child care in general should be privatized either.
Okay, so that childcare was the next one. And then utilities from electricity, heat, water, and internet cell service. All of it utilities, all of it public?
Yeah.
Okay, and then public lands and natural resources?
Yeah, the Department of Earth that I intend on creating, $250 billion annually. It's going to absorb the Department of the Interior as well, obviously, because the goal that we have for the Department of Earth is to take over or take back. I would say take back, not really take over, but take back a lot of the land that we lost, especially waterways, rivers, things along those lines. Take it back into the hands of the people, because the job of the Department of Earth is to make sure that we have self-sustaining and healthy Earth, basically. So the Department of Earth's core responsibility, including recycling, by the way, so garbage, recycling, and stuff like that. We do a fairly good job of that in America right now, but I mean, oh my God, we can do such a better job. And once again, that's an area that should be socialized. We can take care of all of our trash and not dump it. We don't have to dump it into the ocean. That is, that's just a very, very inefficient and a very, for lack of a better term, a very stupid way of dealing with trash, especially when we have the amount of money that we do. We don't have to do that. And also, we can use the recycling plants to make new resources that we would need for pretty much low income, high income, middle income, wherever it is that you need plenty of resources like plastic, metal, or wood.
Three-letter question.
Oh,
yeah.
BIA. What are you going to do about it in your Department of Earth? Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Oh, yes. So this is a very complex issue, and this is one that I have not been able to exactly figure out into detail like the others. But the atrocity that's happened to Native American culture, I mean, it is the worst atrocity that America has done in its existence. I mean, you know, slavery aside, that is the real evil, I think, that we have done. And it's a dangerous thing because in my Department of Knowledge, one of the big things that we're trying to do and make it accessible to the people is to create a sort of history year by year from the current year all the way down to the beginning of the earth. Well, there's going to be a problem when we try to do that, which is that there have been just decades, centuries of Native American history that we have slaughtered away. So, and it's getting to a point right now where we aren't going to be able to get a lot of that history back, which is a huge mistake because history is not something to be trifled with. I don't understand why we have denigrated it to the point where history in general is no longer a core, I guess you would say, a core aspect of this society. People really don't care as much about history. How many historians do you see in your life just walking around writing down history? Almost none. We have modern journalism, which attempts to say that it's the first draft of history, but it's an obfuscation of history. It's not really what's going on. It's what rich people want you to know. So with the Native American crisis that we have, we really need to work quickly because every single year that we have that we are not providing, and I would say provide these same services. I don't understand why we cannot work with Native American communities to get universal healthcare, universal education. And the thing about my plan is attempts to basically provide these services for all. So whether you're Native American or not, but there's a lot of Native American history out there that we need to be able to get, languages, things along those lines, that we need to be able to incorporate into part of our society, or else we're going to lose large pieces of our real history on this continent. Native American history and I'm not a big fan of Black History Month because I think Black history is history, American history just in general. And I think there is only one history, it's the truth. And with Native American communities, it's a very, very complex issue because there are many of them. And we have reservation systems, some of them are impoverished. So with some areas, I can see us essentially just making them either a part of our society. I mean, it's a really complex issue that I actually don't have an answer for, but I know the importance of, and I know we have to get them incorporated into our society. And bigger yet, we need to be able to get the knowledge and history from them, or else, honestly, I mean, we're not going to be able to have all the tools we need to move forward.
So we have a little more list to go through. Linda, is that good? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to make one comment. Collin, you need to have a chat with me and some other people because you were a little confused there. And it's not your fault because they failed to teach the 1,000-year gap in our history. And I think that's one of the most important things to teach. Exactly.
I'm in agreement with you there. But yes, I do not know I would not be able to lay out specifics like I will in other departments.
Yeah, I can help you.
So we've got maybe 10 more items here. Do you want public options for banks?
Oh yeah, the Department of Economics, which is a $100 billion a year federal program that we have. The Department of Economics provides basic banking services. Bernie Sanders had a similar version of this where he said that the post office could act to provide basic banking services. I kind of take that a step farther and I just say, no, we're just going to create our own banks because post offices might be fine, but once again, we're a rich country. We don't have to do these kind of half measures, which it wouldn't be a half measure by any means, but I intend to have really, really high quality banking services available to all Americans. And it's part of what I would basically say would be our economic revitalization program. We need public banks. And by the way, in order to do this too, we need to have Glass-Steagall, a modern Glass-Steagall, because you cannot have a successful public banking system if you still have commercial and investment banks operating as the same entity. You're going to continue to have what you have right now, which, just one little mark on Glass-Steagall for those of you who don't think it really pertains to your life. My father has worked in retail for a very, very long time, for 20 years. And he's high end, so district manager, regional director of operations, things along those lines. He's in the upper echelon of the corporate scale. And he worked for Payless, he worked for Toys R Us, he worked for Lens Crafters. If any of these businesses sound familiar to you, all of these businesses went down the same road, which is they went public. They got bought out by some large Wall Street firm. These Wall Street firms replaced high members of that particular retail conglomerate with their own people who immediately wound up being incompetent, wound up leaving after 6 months, and they crashed those stores to the ground. On the Young Turks, they did an expose on Toys R Us and found out, yes, Toys R Us was falling behind because of Amazon and things along those lines. But also they found out that it was happening before then, because when they got bought out by these public entities, by Wall Street, basically, Wall Street didn't maintain stores because Wall Street doesn't want to invest money in stores. They don't know how to grow things. They know how to suck the wealth out of things. So, it's a different entity when you're having a leech basically take over your company as opposed to, a leader or a builder. So in order for this to work, we have to have Glass-Steagall, a very prominent one that separates investment and commercial banks. When you do that, having the Department of Economics, having a basic banking system that provides basic banking services to people all across the country, poor neighborhoods, rich neighborhoods, same service, then you have a bottom line that banks have to meet. You have a bottom line standard for customer service. You have a bottom line standard for rates, interest rates, things along those lines. Then it'll be successful. You'll see the banking system actually grow.
Excellent. Thank you. So then we've got mass transit from airways, railways, ferries, and buses.
Yeah, this has been the mistake that we've been privatizing aggressively in our infrastructure, roads, transportation, things along those lines. So the Department of Transportation, I don't even think you should pay bus fare. And I don't understand, why do we have public transportation if you then have to pay? But then again, for my program, I kind of take that towards everything. Well, okay, if this is a public utility, why the hell am I paying $280 a month for this? That's the opposite of a public utility. That's a private utility disguised as a public utility. So with transportation and with all of these things I'm talking about, the amount that Americans are going to have to pay for it offhand will be zero. So there'll be $0 paid. You just get on the bus and you take the bus wherever you need to go. You get on the train, you take the train wherever you need to go. I do actually want a public option for airplanes, but that's going to be a much more complex route to go. And we'll see how we do with that. But yes, transportation, public.
Excellent. And then you mentioned infrastructure, and that would be the next on the list.
Yeah.
And then military and its associated industrial complex.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do with my plan, and you can see it, we change it. We're no longer the Department of Defense, I guess you call it. It's the Department of Protection, and it shoots down to $150 billion a year. And we plan to decrease that to just a self-sustaining level, because I think $150 billion is still really, really deep, because it's only like $1 billion or something like that to pay for the payroll, which for the Department of Protection, instead of investing in giant tanks and in giant, just outdated machinery, I guess you would say, like, we don't need any more tanks. We don't need any more ships. When are we going to be literally declaring war with anyone? Warfare these days is not the same as it was in the 1900s and the 1800s, et cetera, where you have one massive standing army against another massive standing army. So what we need to do is we need to train, basically retrain our soldiers in general and redirect what our defense does. And so our Department of Protection will incorporate Border Patrol, which I think right now is out of control. I don't think we need 10 or 20,000, however much he wants to increase it. We don't need that many people on the borders. But the Department of Protection is set to basically do that. They're there to protect. So the point of it is to have no offensive mindset at all and to eliminate that. Because the problem with the Department of Defense, in its ideology especially, is, well, I have to attack you to defend my country. That's what the whole war in Iraq was. And the whole war in the Middle East was in general, and Vietnam as well, is, hey, we need to invade this country before it creates any, political party that might spread and destroy our capitalism or whatever it is. I don't think that we actually need a military in an offensive structure at all. And so I intend to change that.
Excellent. And then Veterans Administration?
So the Veterans Administration, for me, is going to look much different. Not in the sense that they're going to get like lower quality care or anything like that, but the Department of Health covers the three aspects of humanity. It covers the mind and the body type of thing. So they will have free psychiatric therapy. They'll have free healthcare when they get back. And so we have to redesign what the benefits are for soldiers, because the Veterans Administration is there to provide healthcare. Because our system is so convoluted, we have to have a separate entity that takes care of our soldiers, because they, obviously our healthcare is too expensive. Nobody can afford it. And so some of the ideas that we've kind of have drawn up will be things like being able to collect Social Security at a much earlier age. Social Security in general, I plan to drop the age to 55. And so 55, you can collect the benefits. And if you raise the raise the cap on taxable income, you can increase benefits just like crazy. And so we're going to do that at the same time. So with veterans, they'll be able to get one of their benefits. They'll be able to get the Social Security benefit at an earlier age. And we can do something along the lines of where they get an extra $1,000 when that does happen, et cetera, et cetera. But also one of the things that people don't talk about as much, and it really frustrates me, especially when they started going after the soldiers. Soldiers aren't paid enough. Soldiers aren't paid nearly enough for what they do. And so I'm going to double the amount that they're paid.
Excellent. Okay, and then scientific funding and space exploration.
Man, okay, so this was even more frustrating when I looked at our actual federal spending, and I found out of all of the things that we invest our money in, science is at the lowest for our federal budget. Our highest is Social Security, but our highest for what I would call actual spending, our highest is the military. Our lowest is science at $29.8 billion a year. That's just ridiculous. And so in the Department of Knowledge and in the Department of Earth, both of which are $250 billion annual programs. So they're not some small, it's not some small investment. It's more than double. I can't do the math right now in my head, but taking it from $30 billion to $500 billion, not all of it, of course, will be specifically for that, but a larger majority will. About 100 to $200 billion will be dedicated to that. And the reason for that, why I think that that's more important than people say, is because I want to dispel this rumor just out loud real quick. A lot of people say that what will take out human civilization in general is our population. Population control, you guys. We have too many people. We're just, pissing out babies or whatever it is. Population is not a problem. It is our resources and how well our population can handle problems that is the different factor. So basically saying, if you have a large population and they're intelligent and they know how to work together very well. They know how to be a part of a team environment. They know how to address and handle issues in an efficient way. It doesn't matter how big your population is, because you have a population that can adapt, that can help, and that can fix real issues that you have on the ground. They can allocate resources. They can create resources, which is something that we've seen in America over the last 100 years. So I do not support the notion that population is, a problem. And I know none of you guys said that, but it keeps going around in that liberal, dialogue. And I just think it's a really stupid notion. And
yeah, I agree. And I have more to say on that too.
Okay, yeah, right.
So we've only got a few more. I'm just going to rattle. There's 5: libraries, community housing, elections, first responders. I'll save the other one. Actually, that's its own thing.
Yeah,
so
all of them.
Those are all public services.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then this is an idea that I like to share called the caregiver's basic income, in that so people who are either raising children or caring for the sick or the elderly, they have a basic income, and that it's a Social Security qualifying thing, so that they get credit for it in their Social Security. But that helps anybody who finds themselves providing care, and it especially the sandwich generation, people who are caring for both children and like aging parents. So what do you think about a caregiver's basic income?
Yeah, and it's and one of the things that I think is the biggest atrocity that we've seen is how much we have not invested in our young people in general. I mean, when we are rich, okay, and that's the one thing I'm going to probably say over and over again over this podcast, or over this live stream. America is very, very rich. We are very, very rich. There's no reason that childhood poverty and childhood hunger should be such a big thing. In fact, it shouldn't exist. It just shouldn't exist. We can pump a lot more money into our foster care centers. So those who are providing caregivers, they get a salary. I know this basic income, same thing, but I mean, they have a job that they're doing. So I wouldn't call it basic income. I call it salary. They're given money to provide a service for their community. They should also be given a stipend or essentially what I think is, a modern house, basically, that they're provided even if they don't have one. But yeah, I mean, our childcare service is so horrendous that I understand why Bernie brings it up. Almost every single place that he goes is, he taps on healthcare, education, and then childcare services is always one of those that's up there. And it's one because our politicians almost never talk about it. But things will happen. Things change when you decide, when you invest in them. So when you invest in the youth, you invest in literally people taking care of people. I mean, you really got to think about federal budget, $4 trillion. Where do you want it to go? Do you want it to go to things that force people to fight on other countries? Example, our military. Or do you want it to be invested into people who take care of others? I mean, it's a simple, basic moral question. And so I am down for investing in people who take care of each other.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then I was reading through your website, and you've touched on some of the things that I noted as being pretty interesting, like Department of Earth, and I saw your Department of Agriculture. I wanted to bring up something more of an idea share than a question, but are you familiar with permaculture? Permaculture? Yeah, have you heard of that before?
Probably not in the same sense that you're talking about if it deals with agriculture.
It does. It's about finding patterns in nature and replicating them in forests and stuff.
To make it a self-sustaining farm that's eco-friendly and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, yes, sorry.
So you don't need external input or to take things off of your property to maintain balance. And it should be restorative, not damaging. Yeah. So I just like to share permaculture as something for each candidate to follow up on if they're not aware of it.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is a lot of progressive candidates already know about it. And so now it used to be surprising when they knew. Now I'm like, I don't know, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I call that. Yeah, I call that self-sustaining farming. Permaculture is good word, but is a good word for it as well. But yes, the whole purpose of the Department of Agriculture is because we really do need to take over our production. So this is something that's really big in the UK as well. Jeremy Corbyn has talked a lot about this. But 56 to 60% of our carbon emissions that we emit in this country come from the way that we farm animals. It's animal farming specifically is what really is causing that. The mass amount of land that we have to feed them, the unsanitary conditions. And by the way, from a health standpoint, that's how superbugs are made. They're made because we treat, and I'm very, very sorry for this, we treat our animals like shit. And so they grow up and they have these diseases and they spread the diseases to our food. We get it. And so we create these superbugs and that are, right now, some of which we can't kill. Linda, go ahead.
Have you seen the documentary about Vermont's use of cow effluents to create electricity that goes out from the farms to the digesters and to the people, and has cut the electric bills hugely in a place that has god-awful winters?
Right. No, I have not seen the documentary, but yes, I have heard discussions about that topic, and those are exactly the kind of things that in the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Earth. The Department of Earth, by the way, is going to be a department that works side by side with a lot of different departments, including the Department of Energy, because we need to get to 100% self-sustainable energy, not by 2030, by 2024, in all honesty. We really need to get there quickly. Because not only will that be able to save us a lot of money, because once we get onto self-sustaining energy, we don't have to pay that much for energy, not from our federal spending, not from any standpoint. I mean, it's really cheap. It should sound obvious, but it's very cheap to have self-sustaining energy. It literally pays for itself. So the faster we get on that, the easier it's going to be. And then, yeah, the Department of Agriculture, self-sustaining farming, and ideas like the one that you just talked about, Linda. I mean, those are self-sustaining ideas. That's the goal of what the Department of Agriculture is going to do. And it's going to do it in a way that promotes cooperatives as opposed to hierarchical structures. So the point of being, instead of having, the head farmer and then the assistant head farmer and then the laborers, you just have a bunch of people that work there and they are farmers. They're all paid the same and they all work together as a cooperative to maintain a self-sustaining small farm, basically. We need to just like the banking system, how we have banks that are too big to fail. It's the same thing with our production system in terms of animal farming. We have industries that are too big to fail in a sense. And we need to break them down because they're not too big to fail in an economic sense. They're too big to fail in a world sense, where if we keep letting these titans get bigger and bigger and bigger, they are literally going to destroy the world, the actual ecosphere that we live in.
Yep.
And then something else I found interesting in your departments is provide a 5-year contract for citizenship. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So this has been one that's been up for big debate. It was 5 when we first kind of did a test to see if we would be able to get conservatives for it. But honestly, we think that 3 is more of a suitable number. And it's as simple as this. If you apply for citizenship, you live here for 3 years, without obviously breaking any laws. I mean, you just get citizenship. It's not some weird convoluted thing. And this includes if you've already lived here and paid taxes. So if you've already lived here for over 3 years and you've paid your taxes and, you just basically are a good citizen, then you get citizenship. It's just simple, straightforward. We don't need a test, like those weird tests that they have you to see how much you love America or something along those lines. And so what we need is easy, practical, sensible ways to get citizenship. And the main reason for that is obviously also because we need a growing economy. I mean, that's what Republicans are always about. Grow the economy, grow the economy. Well, from a domestic standpoint, our birth rate is at about 0 going to negative. We're an industrialized country. Almost all industrialized countries have a net 0 birth rate. So they're literally not growing, they're shrinking. So the way that we're going to be able to keep a vibrant economy and be able to keep growing just as a nation in general is through immigration. I mean, immigrants are not a problem. Immigrants, by and large, are a very, very vital and important part of American society, and societies in general. And so we need to really embrace that. And we need to make it an easy, comprehensible. And the way that I put that is this: if somebody is explaining anything to you, literally anything, and it takes a long time and they have to use a lot of strange words, they don't know what they're talking about or they're lying to you. So for any problem that we have in this world, because once again, this world is made by humans, logic, the systems that we create, it's made by humans. If you can't explain it simply to someone, it's corrupt. And our immigration, can anyone explain our immigration system to us right now?
Good point.
No, it's corrupt beyond reason.
And then I have a couple of questions about your Department of Protection, because I think your wording of it makes it sound like really cool. With the protect citizens from external and internal threats, but then protect Americans during expeditions and adventures.
Oh, yeah. So, and this goes more to the point of the Department of Knowledge, what the Department of Knowledge's problem is. And so I guess I'm going to kind of explain the biggest part, or what I would consider the biggest part of investment in my particular agenda, which is to create literally, I guess you would say it's, and the Department of People's requirement is to do this, but with your social security number, you'll be able to access your social security account, essentially from similar to an app. And, from a protection standpoint, it's similar to, either way, I'm just going to kind of explain the program itself. But what the goal is to provide all the knowledge, essentially, the world has to offer within one app. And so this includes history. On this particular app, the Department of Knowledge, you'll be able to scroll through and look at the entire world and break it down to the street, break it down to the city. And it will tell you, you know, what city's there, what's the capital of X and Y city, what are the animals living in particular areas, what's the vegetation living in particular areas. And you'll be able to do that same thing going throughout history. So the Department of Protection is there to protect our assets. So knowledge is the biggest asset they're going to be protecting. So when it comes to going to other countries, like you know, to make a very, very long story short, we've only explored 4% of our oceans, and we have not explored even 50%, or sorry, not 50%, 76% of our land. So we need to start doing that. And in those expeditions, when you're, you know, obviously trying to discover more about the world in general, you just never know what's going to happen. So one of the big purposes of the Department of Protection is for them to be versatile enough to be able to go into rough tundras, into icy tundras, anything along those lines, whatever nature can kind of throw at us, to be able to learn and keep the scientists or keep the agents that we are sending into those areas to learn about those areas, to learn about those ecologies, make sure that they come home safe with the information that we need.
Okay, interesting. And then with the Department of Protection, we have a real problem with gun violence, and it's not just mass shootings, it's police shootings. So do you have a plan? What is your feelings about the militarization of our police forces?
Yeah, it's why I'm creating, you know, it's why I think the Department of Protection is going to be a really vital point to this, because I think the police ideology has failed. The idea that, because, you know, what do police do? Police protect assets. They don't protect people. You know, I run my, you know, a business in North Everett, and I love the police when they're around because they will do whatever they can to protect me. And by the way, they're really great police in the area that I have. I'm not, I don't want to sound like a police basher or anything along those lines, but the system itself is inherently flawed. And by the way, it's inherently flawed because of the laws that Bill Clinton passed. The idea of a quota in general, when you're protecting people, that doesn't make any sense. That inherently, you're incentivizing brutality when you do stuff like that. When you say, hey, you need to have 30 tickets a month or you're off the force. Well, what if there aren't 30, you know, incidents worth writing a citation for? Well, then you have to make trouble, which is obviously what they do. And when you see interviews with certain, policemen who have the courage to say why they attack Black or Native American or basically low economic communities, they do that because why? Those people don't have lawyers. So they can get away with whatever they want and get the citation they need. And they know that they're going to get away with it. What's the problem with upper economic areas, middle class and upper middle class areas? They have lawyers. So they can't get away with that kind of thing. And this doesn't happen as much in Washington State, but I mean, it still happens in Washington State, and it happens all across the country. So the Department of Protection, what we're going to do is we're going to ban certain guns. I really want to address the heart of this issue. Here's the problem with guns, and you guys are adults, so we can have this adult conversation. And I know no one's going to try to scream or throw feces at me or anything like that. The battle for guns is a two-way street. You are either pro-freedom or you're pro-life. It's as simple as that, because guns have no other purpose beside to kill. You can try to say, well, you know, they kill animals so we can feed families. Killing is killing. I don't really care. And AR-15s, by the way, are not meant to kill animals. They're meant to kill humans. They're meant to tear humans apart. That's literally their goal. They spin, so when they hit your body, they can go anywhere that they want to tear human flesh. So I am for banning all human killing guns, etc. But the root of the argument is, what do you believe? Do you believe that, are you more a fan of life, or are you more a fan of freedom? Now, here's the thing from the freedom argument. As a free society, should you have the freedom to be dangerous? That is a viable concern to say, okay, look, to be a free society, I need to be able to be dangerous so that I can also have the threat of force and not just the state. Well, on the other side, if you're pro-life, guns have only one purpose. So if you believe that life is more important, simple as this, you need to figure out how to get rid of guns in general, because any amount of guns is going to kill. Now, as for where we stand for what we can get, I think that we need to move towards a more Japanese style of gun control. which is basically forcing gun owners. If you want to have a gun, that's fine, but you have to know the responsibility of it. You're going to have to maintain it. You're going to have to do semi-annual. What do they call them in Japan? Where you basically just go in, you take a test, you show that you know how to handle a gun, you take a psychology test, so you show that you're a sane person that needs a gun, not for self-defense. Self-defense is not a reason to need a gun. It has to be a threat that's kind of in your area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's supposed to be a complex issue, but it's really not. It gets down to that. Are you pro-life or are you pro-freedom? Yes, there is a middle ground, kind of, but overall, no. And so, the middle ground is what we're going to fight for in the beginning. But I think that states in general should be able to pass amendments to ban guns or not, whether that society itself wants to or not. And I think that should happen about every 4 or 5 years. I think there should be another referendum that goes through that allows people to allows societies, individual states to make that choice for themselves. But in the meantime, I'm definitely going to fight for comprehensive gun control, making sure that we don't have lunatics, we don't have the gun control loopholes. It's too easy to get a gun. If it's easier to get a gun than it is to get a car, you have a problem. And especially in America, our number one problem is guns. It is actually guns. The amount of we have more guns than we have people. So you throw that in any context, even with the most intelligent, disciplined, well-spoken people, and you throw a bunch of guns around them, well, guess what? They're going to get shot. More guns in any area is going to cause more gun violence. And so that's another issue that we need to address. And I'm not against buying back guns. I mean, I think that's a really, really great idea where you simply have, and the same thing for drugs, by the way. Drugs is the main thing about our campaign. But I mean, I think we should be buying drugs back from the streets as well. Hardcore drugs, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of guns, yeah, we should have incentives for people to disarm themselves, basically get rid of the mass amount of guns that they have.
Okay, so are you addressing at the same time you're restricting gun access, are you also restricting gun access to police forces?
Yeah, because I do believe that the police should have, civilians should have the same level of force as the police.
Okay.
So I do not think, I'm not down for a police, and it shows when we had the so-called riots down, I don't know if it was in Florida, I can't really remember, but I remember the staunch interview where they had, there was a police officer who had essentially an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle pointed at a civilian who just walked out of a shop. And there was a soldier who was on that same panel who said, look, that's not okay by any sense of the word. I'm in the military. You know what they teach us in the military? They teach us discipline. They teach us understanding when to use a gun. You never point a gun at anyone unless you plan to shoot them. That's why when you see soldiers off post, their guns at their side, it's facing on the ground. They know how important that is. And they can receive massive disciplinary measures if they're just pointing it willy-nilly at whoever, like, oh, look at them, I'm going to kill these guys on the roof. Mm-hmm. I'll get you in 1 second. I'm just going to finish this point. But it's the same thing with our police force. I mean, they have shown already that they cannot handle the responsibility of semi-automatic rifles, of tanks, of anything along those lines. Because you know what they're doing? They're just shooting people. That's all they're doing. Oh, go ahead, Brian. You had something?
Toys from the military, so they need to use them, and they're going to do what they can to use them. I've got actually quite a lot of questions. Courtney, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask before I can take over for a minute?
Well, I would like to know more about the buyback of drugs, and whether or not it involves any decriminalization or.
Yeah. I think the way that we're attacking drugs in general is just stupid. It's just stupid. And you can read about this in my campaign core message. Drug addiction is not because of drugs. It's the one thing that people always get wrong. It is not because of drugs. It is because of the environment that people live in. When people feel that they have no future, when people feel that nobody does care about them, they don't care about anyone else. It's pretty simple. So for the last 40 years, and I mean, it's just what happens when you have rich people doing all the talking, when you have the top 1%, sheltered, essentially, people who do all the talking and do all the thinking. Your environment is the catalyst for your drugs. If you're sitting there, and the idea, he talks about the rat experiment. You can go ahead and watch that video, but either way, we can go ahead and move on because it's a really complex thing. But you change their environment and you bring incentives to come back to society. You bring incentives to come back to society, you can turn the drug war. Well, by the way, you got to eliminate the drug war in general. That's one of the stupidest policies that we've really had. And it has destroyed our police force. Police used to be just members of the community who, whenever you would call them, they would show up and they would help you take care of whatever it was. Similar to essentially what our the Department of Protection is going to do. They don't go out and try to find issues. That's when you cause problems. Once again, Bill Clinton quotas. So instead, you call them whenever you need help and they will come and they will assist you with whatever you need. None of this weird drug stuff. So buying back drugs is one small fragment that will be able to help incentivize getting them off the drugs and back into the society.
Well, I think that's an interesting concept, and I look forward to understanding better how that fits in with the rest of it. And I hope that you're looking at safe injection sites with offers of quick and immediate access to rehabilitation should they want it. And I said safe injection, but I prefer to call it safe consumption if I did misspeak. And then and with that, Brian, sir.
Thank you. I would say for the drug issue, make it a public health issue instead of a law enforcement issue. That would be my way of going about that.
Yes.
I really enjoy your stance on the animal agriculture industry. I really think that doesn't get talked about enough. And
not at all.
I would also advocate for a plant-based diet or a vegan diet that would also help to keep the animal industry at bay, to be able to not contribute to that industry at all, to be able to help control it. So I just wanted to mention that. I wanted to hear about some of your stances on tribal situations as far as the LNG is concerned in the Port of Tacoma. And then also to follow that up with oil trains, pipelines, and the refineries that are in the district that you will be representing. Yeah.
So one of the things, I'm against pipelines. I'm against oil pipelines in general. And one of the things that has been, to me, just absolutely fascinating and one can say inspiring about the tribal communities is their core beliefs are similar to what I am pushing for in the Department of Earth, where they understand that because we have the power to manipulate our environment in such a way, we have the responsibility to take care of it. We do not get to make the decision to piss away responsibility when we have that much of an impact on the world in general. And so I'm very, very against pipelines. If you're, to me, it's like, okay, that's your responsibility as an oil company. You figure out how to get the oil from one place to another. It's not our responsibility as a society to do that or to let you denigrate our world so that you can have just and it's a simple answer for them. That's the thing that frustrates me about it too. You can do it in other ways, but you decide to do the cheap route. The cheap route is just build a pipeline. Then we don't have to focus on transportation or anything. We don't have to hire as many people, blah, 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 blah. But once again, I am against oil in general. And the Department of Earth and the Department of Energy are together a $300 billion institution that's there to create renewable energy. So I'm trying to get rid of oil in general. I'm trying to eliminate oil companies to a massive extent. And when it comes to the tribes, I'm going to go use the example of the Dakota Access Pipeline, one of the most terrifying videos I've ever seen. And I used to do a journalistic website, a progressive journalistic website called West Nation News. And one of the videos that we have is the videos of a police force, a massive police force, looks like an army. This is a scene that looks like it's from the Game of Thrones, that they're coming in and they're attacking nonviolent Native American protesters in their teepees, literally coming at them with their large tanks, with their weapons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is what happens when you live in a corporate state. That's what happens when you allow force to be used by small fractions of the population, essentially by CEOs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you let money control the world. And so my objective with the plans and policies that I have are to strip the power away from large concentrations of wealth. In general, that's what I'm trying to do. The Department of Health is there to destroy the insurance companies that are scamming us out of money and making millions of dollars on our debt, basically. The Department of Knowledge is there to eliminate all of these CEOs from making large sums of money from knowledge, from education. I do not think knowledge should be something that you pay for. And I, by the way, was one who was stupid enough to do it all by myself. I did not have wealthy parents that were able to assist me in paying for college. I paid for it out of the old-fashioned working hard, 40 hours a week type of thing. Guess what? That doesn't work. Okay, there was a lot of months where I had to choose between tuition and food, things along those lines. It's the same thing for energy, and I think that America has had a terrible stance of not standing up with Native American tribes who have since the beginning. By the way, you want to talk about who's been fighting the tyranny of the large concentrations of wealth in America right from the beginning? Is Native Americans. Okay, Native Americans have been protesting this since white settlers first came to America, and they've been getting slaughtered and dying ever since because of it. And so it's time that we flipped that switch, and we started realizing who our real allies are, and they have been our allies since the beginning, and we have obviously just been too corrupt to notice.
Right. I would say that they're the allies of Mother Earth, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the leaders when it comes to sustainable technology, as far as when we first settled these lands. So we came to conquer, and they already knew how to live with nature.
Exactly. So, I mean, we wonder why this world was such a great, and George Carlin does a really great joke of this, where he says, look at America, look around at this country. This is one of the most beautiful places ever. And then Americans came and shit all over it. We put up shopping malls at every beautiful, marine or little view. We just put up these ugly shopping malls, et cetera, all over. So it's consuming, buy more, that whole joke that he has. It's something I absolutely agree with. I think that we have done a terrible job of being shepherds of our earth.
George Carlin's actually one of my longtime heroes, so it's good.
Right? Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of move on to like healthcare. Yes. Are you aware of I-1600, and have you signed it?
Yes, I've recently become aware of I-1600, and yes, I'm supportive of that.
Awesome. Linda, did you have a question? I saw your hand up there real quick.
I have questions and comments. First, okay. Brian, almost everything you said, I'm applauding. But as a person suffering from a lot of food allergies, just patently throwing protein out the window from animals is a problem for me, because if I eat wheat, I eventually die. If I eat certain other elements like that, I eventually die. If I eat milk or cheese or anything like that, I eventually die a lot sooner than I would like to.
And I would say to that, though, that the technology has come a long way too, and there are a lot of plant-based options that are very similar to meat. And I believe Courtney was going to say something too there.
Yeah, I don't think that you fully comprehend the problems people have with nutritional issues or their cultural relevance to food. And so there's a lot of discussion, and Brian and I have had that discussion, and I'm just waiting for that information to influence his suggestions.
And vice versa with her, because I totally believe that a vegan plant-based diet, taken responsibly and in whole food plant-based diet, can be a way to reverse heart disease, the #1 killer that is in the United States. So
well,
we can get to that whole thing and Dr. Gregor and all that, but we're here to interview Collin.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into some more stuff for like campaign finance reform, and go on ahead.
Could I kind of finish what I was doing and then shut up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that I had concerns about is when you were first talking about the oil industry and getting rid of it I think altogether would be great. There are already ways to do that, but we give money to the oil industry.
Oh yeah.
We throw our money at them.
Yep, they've been pretty much pissing on them.
Of it. We don't need their oil. We
Yeah.
don't need to have laws that say, oh, the big company needs an easement over your farm, so you have to let them do it and destroy your land. Too bad. We've got to stop that attitude. It's really wrong, and it's going to hurt us. Another thing to look at is there are traditional medicines that work just as well if you know what you're doing. There's a Department of Knowledge thing there, Collin, so that we don't get so taken over and so dependent on the Department of, well, the pharmacology people. The big pharma have done great damage to this country and to the people, and that needs to go. We also need to do a lot of thinking about how we're going to live with one another. The native tribes have taken the leadership in a lot of ways, but you need to know who doesn't get along with who, which is still a stupid old problem left over from the Trail of Tears era. And we've got to somehow get rid of this notion that you have to be an official Indian to speak as an Indian, whereas we need to know the difference between being a native person and following the ways and being a citizen of a particular tribe and having particular rights.
All right. Did you want me to comment to that? Or did you guys want to move on real quick?
If you want to.
All right. Because, yeah, I mean, one of the things is I actually think the unification of people right now is is going to be the way of the future. You know, I think people understand how many different races of humanity are there? How many different races of human are there? One, exactly. The one thing that will stick all the time and has always stick throughout history is the truth. So if you want to talk about a way of uniting people, there's only one way to do that. You talk about the truth, all right? Water is water, it's H2O. You can start creating divisions when you start adding politics to it. You start saying, well, you know, water is not water, you know, it's just a juice that comes out of the gods that spills out of the mountains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you rally people around the truth, and that's going to happen. And what I've seen with the Bernie Sanders campaign, especially with the Bernie Sanders campaign, he started talking about truth. Guess what? Republicans jumped on board. Democrats jumped on board. Independents jumped on board. Young people, old people, Generation X, all the way to Generation Z. People rally around from all wakes. People rally around one thing very, very well. They rally around the truth. And in all honesty, it's going to sound super cheesy. I'm sorry about this, but one of the big truths is love in general. People forget that we are tribal animals. We have an innate instinct to want the best for each other, to want to take care of each other, to love each other. It's why we have families. It's why we have friends. We're one of the few species, by the way, we are not one of the few species to have this. Almost all mammals have families, have friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my goal in my federal budget is to invest in that. I want to invest in truth, and I want to invest in love, in people taking care of each other. And we will see all of those other divisions that have been plaguing us for the last 40 years. They'll die real quick. They'll die very quick. I'm talking within 5 years, we'll have people shedding all of this stupid, I hate gays, or I hate blacks, or all this racism, sexism, homophobia, all of that. It'll be shed really, really, really quick when people rally around the truth, which is the truth is we need each other. And we
on your website, you have animal rights.
Yeah.
What do you plan to do for animal rights?
Okay, so the Department of Agriculture, we can do this when we take over production. It's really difficult to enforce this when you kind of have a police force monitoring private companies. Because what do private companies do? They hide and they obfuscate and they pay for people not to look and blah, 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 blah. So when we use the Department of Earth and we use the Department of Agriculture to take over production of animal farming and stuff like that, you just simply impose humane ways of treating your animals, making sure that they have a home, or that they have a shelter, that the shelter is X amount of feet wide, X amount of feet long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that they have plenty of grass, that they have a natural diet. So basically a diet that's natural to the animal.
How do you humanely kill an animal?
What?
How do you humanely kill an animal?
Just quickly. I mean, I'm going to say I am not for eliminating protein in general from the diet. That would have to be a conversation that we have in a much longer time, because I still believe
it would. That's kind of why I bring it up, because if you have it on your website, be prepared to defend it, because people like me will come up and there will be some definite issue with that statement, because if you want to give animal rights, that's a whole different ball of wax. But I do want to move on, because I know that Courtney's probably going to jump in here and address something, but I really would like to move on.
I will just say that so Brian will give you the questions that to expect, and I will help you develop the answers to give.
There you go.
All right, perfect.
So
thank you guys.
I want to know how you're planning on and how you are financing your campaign.
Ooh, good one.
Oh, so obviously I have no corporate backers.
That's good. That's actually that's a plus. That's not something to laugh at. That's something to be
there are almost no corporations that will touch me. I'm funded honestly from just myself. I fund a lot of this the stuff that we have. So the technology that we're talking to you guys on now, I fund through my own job, and then all the rest is from donations from the people.
Great.
I wouldn't even know how to go about getting.
Now, with some of this, some of the talk with, I'm with Represent Us as well. It's a national organization. We work on the American Anti-Corruption Act. And it's about getting ranked choice voting, of course, getting a more proportional representation, putting back laws that were stripped away little bit by little bit since the 70s, taking our voices away. And so just not taking big corporate cash isn't necessarily all of the problems, because there are some special interests that are aligned with us that would want to throw money, possibly environmentally. It's still special interest. Labor, still special interest. So some, still kind of can be worked in the same way. So how do you view overall, because that's something that we're struggling with. Do we take some PAC money from certain ones? Do they align with us?
As long, I'm not going to lie, I'm not the kind of guy who's swayed by money. I make a decent living on my own, and I'm actually very content with the lifestyle that I have right now. I'm not the kind of guy who needs like $1 million or something like that. But what I am good at is I am economical and I am resourceful. So if I'm given money from any particular area, my agenda is going forward no matter what. This is the agenda that I'm going to be fighting for. I will debate anyone to the nines on this. And so I would definitely say, as long as the agenda is getting taken care of, your funds need to be able to guide that. So I would say any corporate entity or any entity of money in general that forces you to have an opinion that's different or that deviates from your sole purpose, you drop them, because you cannot let money control you. But every other entity that is willing to help you, and I'm not going to lie, I work for technically a corporation. It's a nonprofit though, but it's a very, very progressive corporation that I work for. And if they were to support my ideology and my whatever I have, and offer a small sum of cash, I would be down for that. But then if they were to say, well, we're going to give you this money, and I agree with almost everything you have to say, but I need you to relook at your trade deals, etc. Well, then you just drop it. That's how I would say going forward. If they support your agenda, take their money. They support your agenda. That's fantastic. If they have their own stipends, or if they have their own, I support you, but I want you to change this and this and this. As long as it's obviously not for the bad. So if they're not saying, hey, you just need to drop your Department of Earth, okay? We don't need to take care of our waterways, our fields, our earth. We don't need to take care of that. I agree with everything else but that. Then you drop that particular person, you drop that money. But if there are other people who are down for your agenda and willing to have constructive dialogue and communication with you about how they can try to make it happen, take that money.
Thank you.
It just depends on how you can use it.
Oz, you haven't had any questions yet. You ready to chime in, buddy?
Yeah, I'm ready to chime in. Just short, sweet, and quick to the point. I have a couple of questions. The first one, I'm going to let you respond. You don't have to get too in depth, but what can you say good about Rick Larson?
Man, he's a good man.
Oh, really?
To be honest, I unfortunately have nothing good to say about Rick Larson, but I do not want this to be a campaign of negativity. I have a very unique agenda that it honestly, I'm going to have to spend all my time talking to my agenda because I'm obviously running because I don't think Rick Larson is quite doing the job that we need. And I think my economic plan will actually turn this country into the pinnacle of human society in general. And one that I think that people if they were to model in their own countries, we would see, a sort of world peace. I don't think Larson has done much of anything, honestly, since he's been in office. I mean, and I don't mean to pick on him. I'm very serious. I'm running a very positive campaign, an idea driven. But look at the last 16 years that he's been in office. Everett, I work in Everett, okay? I work in North Everett. I work right down from the halfway homes in North Everett. I have drug addicts ODing in my location a lot, quite frequently. I know the drug problem. And when you look at the drug problem over the last 16 years, it has gotten worse and worse every year. And he doesn't talk about it. He hasn't mentioned one word about it. In fact, I signed up for his email thing. There's not an issue I remember him emailing me about that was important over the last 16 years. So I am running because I do not believe he's doing the adequate job. And I don't know. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, that's sufficient. I appreciate your ethics and how you want to run the campaign. I do disagree with that in some respects, but that's my personal opinion. I actually worked on a couple of campaigns, or actually one, and indirectly with two others that ran against Rick Larson. So I'm pretty much up on Rick Larson, and I agree with you. His record, as far as voting record, has been about 22% social issues he's voted right on, and the rest of it has been corporate all the way. So being the new liberal, he's done a good job for the corporations, and that's who he works for. My next question is, I have two questions. One more. When you say we're a rich country, can you define what you mean by that?
Oh, yeah. So from an overall GDP standpoint, we are the richest country in the history of the world. So it is, in comparison to all other civilizations ever created, in the history. This is obviously difficult to say because we didn't know the denominations in ratio aspect in history. So we don't exactly know how rich the Egyptians were in ratio to the rest of the world because they didn't have a regular currency, et cetera, and blah, blah, blah. But America is statistically the richest country in the world at this point with the same currencies. So we had flatline currencies all over the place. And so you take, and I talk about it in my economic history report, you take what we spend in terms of our federal fiscal budget, and it's only $3.8 trillion, which is 20.5% of our overall GDP. So, and most Americans should know, if you are in the middle or honestly, if you're in the middle class, you're paying 25 to 30% of your income. So for the overall country, corporations included, for us to only be paying 20.5%, that is, to me, ridiculous. By the way, 20.5% in taxes to our overall federal budget. That is ridiculous because that means that who is paying the majority of that? Well, it's middle and lower class families. So we need to restore the taxes that we had on wealthy corporations to bring that up, because $4 trillion is a lot of money. And so now getting through, what do I mean by we're the richest country ever, or we're a rich country? $4 trillion is a lot of money. And I outlined in my budget what you can do with $4 trillion if you're not fed by Wall Street, the military industrial complex, and the overall wealthy communities in the world. You can do a lot. You can have free tuition education, pre-K through PhD, of no expense to the taxpayer as well. So basically, if you go to college, your books are paid for, your room and board is paid for. And also, like I said, there's an incentive at the end. So when you get your degree, you get 2 to 10, whatever we decided is the right amount of money for any specific degree. You can also have a world-class healthcare system, We don't have a healthcare system. People forget that. We have a health insurance system. It's absolutely, it's just the stupidest thing. But either way, with $4 trillion, you can also provide internet for all households, all businesses. That saves a lot of money. By the way, healthcare saves a lot of money. As a business owner, I'll tell you the one thing that kills my bottom line more than anything else are workers' compensations. So all employers can do is try to teach them to be safer, create safer environments, which, obviously we have no problems doing, but that doesn't solve the issue because mistakes happen. The world is random. And so random things do happen all the time. And so with $4 trillion, you can have free internet, you can have public housing, literal public housing. You can do a lot with $4 trillion. We could turn this country around with $4 trillion. And so that's what I plan to do. And I want people to know that's a lot of money because look what you can do with it. You can change the world. It's not a small sum. We're not, South Africa or even in Europe. A lot of those countries have a smaller budget than we do, and they're able to pull this off. So, things like the UK and France, Germany is more of the big example. That's probably the most stable economy in the world. And so that's what I plan to do. And especially being the richest, I don't want just healthcare. We're going to have the highest healthcare, the highest high-class healthcare in the world.
Well, you've got your progressive stump down really good in responding to questions, and I do appreciate that. And I agree with your positions because it is pretty much across the board very, very progressive. My last question, and then my last comment after this question, on the Toys of Us, you mentioned that scenario, and it's my understanding, and tell me if you know this or agree with this, but Toys R Us was originally a leveraged buyout through three capital companies, Bain Capital and two others. And Toys R Us was actually a profitable company. They were making money, I should say.
They always had in the beginning. That's why they get bought out.
Yeah, and I believe, in my opinion, and I wanted to see if you would agree with this premise, that Toys R Us was actually a setup to buy it and then kill it. One of the typical scenarios of unregulated capitalism. And these capital management companies bought that with the intention of killing it at some point in time through the methods that they did, because it actually was. They turned that buyout into a self-destructive situation where they're going to make money in the end by making Toys R Us, the whole corporation, kill themselves by having this unattainable level of debt replacement to the buyout itself. And that being said, my overall concern is that's happening across the country, and I would hope that you are seriously considering some way to combat this kind of thing. And I believe I'm with Rhonda and the rest of the group here on the anti-corruption. So putting 33,000 more people out of work is a horrendous, horrendous problem. And do you agree with how I've parsed this as more of a do you agree or not question?
Yeah, you parsed it really well because, and once again, my father was for Toys R Us and Payless. So you want to talk about another conglomerate that went down the same exact way? Yeah, and it always starts like that. Wall Street will buy out companies that are profitable. Toys R Us was profitable, doing very, very well. Payless, same thing. Payless became so big that over 50% of all footwear bought in America was through Payless. It's either 50 or 40. I don't know. But either way, that's a large chunk of the overall footwear world, especially when you have Nike, which controls another large part of it. So they know what they're doing. Wall Street is not stupid. They're going to buy out these profitable companies, especially when you don't have. So by the way that you combat that is by you have Glass-Steagall, and then you have what's called cooperatives action protection. So cooperative, basically with cooperatives protection, what you have is when a company decides to go to Wall Street and they decide to make that, they have to make it public to their people, and they have to provide the option for the employees there to pool in their money to make it a cooperative as opposed to making it run by Wall Street, basically. And so there are sensible, clear ways of making sure that doesn't happen. Those two would do it. I take it a step farther, obviously, in my plan, but those two right there will do it. Glass-Steagall, a modern Glass-Steagall, and cooperatives insurance.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Collin. I appreciate that. And my comment as I go out, thanks for the day today. And I really appreciate your progressive position. I would suggest that you put in a conventional website and try and recruit more people for a campaign staff so you can brainstorm on some different tactics. And I hope you're open to their ideas. Thank you very much. And thanks to the group here for letting me participate. I'm getting called away, but I really appreciate it once again. Thanks.
Oh, thank you again, Oz. It's always a pleasure having you join us. All right, Tyler's had his hand up for a while now. So let's Tyler, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, Collin. I'm Tyler. I'm the guy who started the CD2 debate thread. Yeah. Incidentally, Oz, who just left, is also one of the co-founders of Washington State for Bernie Sanders, the webpage. Good person to know on Facebook. Really good person. Everybody here is, but particularly good person to know on Facebook. I have a couple of questions for you. They're mostly strategic. What is your party affiliation, and what will you put on your form come May 18th?
I'm an independent. I'm just an independent, you guys. The political party that I would say I'm a part of is the Revolutionist Party. I'm not a Democrat, and I'm not per se a Republican. And those institutions, I agree with Kyle Kulinski on his idea that we need to be attacking progressive values from all avenues. So we need to make sure that we have progressives that are penetrating the Republican Party. We have progressives that are penetrating the Democratic Party. We have independent progressive voices that are fighting the system as well. But yeah, I'm an independent of the Revolutionist Party if I'm to be a part of any party.
What are you going to write on the form when it gets to you in May?
I have the Revolutionist Party written down right now.
Revolutionist Party, thank you. That's one of my several questions. Would you support Stony Bird if he were to advance in the primary?
Yeah.
Presumably not against you.
Yeah. My goal is, obviously, I'm very young doing this too. I've never done this before, and we're doing this at a full-time schedule, et cetera, et cetera. But the agenda that I have and the skill sets that I have just as an individual in general have kind of made me believe that and have pushed me to kind of realize that this is the job for me, that this is the job where I can be the most effective, I can make the biggest change both to our society and the biggest help to people in general. And this agenda is the agenda that's going to pull that off, by the way. This is the agenda that I plan on pushing for tooth and nail. And so whether I win it this time, that's fine. I'm going to go at it next time and next time and next time until eventually I will win this. Eventually I will get the support. I'm 26 now. If I win it when I'm 28, that's no problem. If I win it when I'm 30, that's no problem. But in the short term, I want to learn as much as I can. I want to go as far as I can. And if I don't wind up winning, I'm absolutely fine with supporting progressive candidates because I am here to help as much as I can to change this country for the better. And so if I'm not able to get that chance and we have to go with someone like Stony, I'm absolutely okay with that.
Yeah. So two-part question. Would you support either Brian Luke of the Libertarian Party or Rick Larson if they advanced, or both?
Not Rick Larson. And the Libertarian Party is a very dangerous party. I do not support the Libertarian Party.
Okay. So with the five candidates who are, so there's only four of you, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't count. The only one you would support is Stony. Is that a true statement?
If he's progressive, yeah, and yeah, exactly. So if he's a Berniecrat and he's progressive, I would support him. Probably.
Okay. Cool. So are you? I think this will be my last question. I have to get back to work, but are you familiar? I believe I touched on it briefly, but are you familiar with what is now being called Article the First, the original First Amendment of the Constitution?
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, what if given the current circumstances and the impact on your exact scenario, I guess I'm wondering why it's not on your platform based on who you are and what you're doing. I would want people like you to be really pushing this Article the First issue at an incredibly high level, as I am, obviously, and why I bring it up. What would it do for me to convince you that actually promulgating or enacting the original First Amendment might actually make all the things you're talking about possible, and that furthermore, it's not possible if you don't.
Yeah. Well, just saying that. So I would say, for a lot of this, I'm relatively new to the political ecosphere in general. And so much like I understand the concepts, but I don't understand the diction and the terminology behind it. Same with I understand sustainable farming, but I didn't understand the term that she had for it, the
permaculture,
yeah, permaculture, things along those lines. So I'm always down to learning, and it's still a new learning process for me as well. And it's why my campaign in general is set up in a way through our Gmail account where people can be a part of the Google Drive. So it's an open dialogue conversation. I have ideas that I'm going to fight for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a campaign that I really don't want to be solely about me. And I want it to be run similarly to what a cooperative would be, which is we're coming up with the ideas for how to execute these together, because one head can't solve 100 issues as quickly as 1,000 heads, as quickly as 1,000,000 heads. So if you have ideas like this First Amendment, the original First Amendment issue that you think are important, contact us. Let us know. We'll incorporate that into our platform, especially because, and I think I wrote this on one of the websites, the budget that I have created out of the $4 trillion, the budget that we have is a rough preliminary. And so when if people have, and it's written in a way that if people have ideas that they want to push to either make it more detailed or to, redirect funds because one area is more important than the other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we're open to have that conversation. And we hope that we'll be able to make that conversation happen. So I would say just send us an email. Let us know. We'll make it a part of we'll make it a part of who we are.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Absolutely. I think that's all I got, and I'm going to have to step away. So thank you guys also for doing this and being the engine on this thing.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you again, Tyler. We always love when you join us. It's a treat. Yes, Linda, it's your turn.
Okay, Collin, I have been wanting to ask this all day. On Wednesday, April 8th, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in Seattle at the Neighborhood Center in Finney Ridge, we are in the Progressive Party of Washington having a candidate vetting situation where everybody who is running can come either in person, which is preferred, or electronically, and find out what kind of questions we're going to be asking. And they may be somewhat different, as you learn from listening to me, from what you're hearing from the lovely Berniecrats. And I call them lovely because they are. And so I'm hoping you'll be able to do that.
Yes, I would absolutely be down for that.
Good.
We have the time slots, so that's perfect.
I'll send you the info, Collin. I'll get the info. Yep.
I was about to say, and for anybody, and it's the same for all of you guys in the Berniecrats. It's we have a very, very small campaign, and I cannot stress that enough. And everybody who's a part of this campaign works full time, and it's everywhere. We have white collar, we have manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the problems that we have found is we just simply don't have the excess amount of time to be able to look up, almost everything, et cetera, and get, and be engaged. That's why we're trying to reach out through social media and be aggressive with our social media to get people to communicate with us through the Collin for Congress 2018 at gmail.com. Talk to us, please, because we definitely need the help and the support, and we're definitely open for getting support from anyone. Our base, that we've been building from just the local communities that we have. It's why we're okay with immigrants being a part of this, even though they can't sign the petition or vote. That's absolutely fine. They have a voice, they can talk, they have a social media, et cetera, et cetera. We need all people kind of batten down the hatches to help out with this campaign because it is incredibly small. And we need everyone, everybody in this forum, we need your help. Everybody who's listening in on this live stream, we need your help. Collin for Congress 2018 at gmail.com. We are obviously the biggest thing too is we're a very open campaign. So you are very, very much not going to see things like, Linda, a lot of the things that you're talking about aren't similar to things we're talking here. They're probably going to go along the realm of things that I am not aware of or something along those lines. We're open for learning about those types of things, and being able to find smart, intelligent ways of handling it. Because our budget, honestly, our federal budget does tackle a lot of the issues. It tackles the roots of a lot of the issues that we've discussed here. And so there is always ways that we can expand it, make it better. And we're going to be able to do it with your guys' help, but we really do need your guys' help. Do not be afraid to talk to us.
It's awesome. We like lines of open communication.
Yes. We'll definitely not shun you guys or anything along those lines.
Very good. Anybody else? Actually, yeah, Linda, before I jump in, anything else from you?
Just basically, we need to make sure every candidate that we can get hold of could be invited to this, because we really need to find out who we want to endorse. And also, I'm having trouble reaching the people who are good at fundraising. So it may take some time to catch them. I may have to go knock on doors at this point.
Yeah. You'll never catch them unless you have about $5,000 cash.
Oh, no, not the people who give money, the ones who raise the money.
Oh,
yeah.
Same thing.
Right. Thank you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about healthcare, and you believe in the single payer. And I did talk to you, but I didn't ask, have you heard of, and do you know about Whole Washington, the initiative that's happening here in Washington State?
And I'm one of the things that why I feel I'm running right now is because Washington State really walks the walk. I know California, and on corporate media, they're always talking about how California is the progressive pinnacle of the United States. We had gay marriage legalized before they did, okay? We had weed legalized before they did, all right? So I really don't want to hear a bunch of talk. I want to hear a bunch of walk. We also, speaking of what Washington State has done, we already have net neutrality laws, legislation already passed in this state. So talk all you want, but I live in a state that walks the walk. And it's why I think that this campaign can pull it off, because I think that specifically in Washington State, we just have a very, very intelligent electorate, and people are really on the ball here. And, my budget, the plans that I'm kind of rolling out for the rest of the country, it's very, very left wing. I mean, I guess you could say I don't really subscribe to the right wing, left wing ideologies. Like I said in my introduction, I think there's only two kinds of voters in the world. I think there's humanists and there's corporatists. Humanists are those who believe that policy should reflect the betterment of humanity. Corporatists are those who believe that policy should benefit and reflect the betterment of large concentrations of wealth. And there are really two kinds of corporatists. There are those who have the money, and then there are those who are falling for the money, whether you fall for the propaganda on corporate media or whether you're paid literally by these people to follow their agenda. And I think, I believe in the whole 99% American type of thing, where 99% of Americans are together against the small 1%. But my plan is for 100%. As much as I understand how much these corporations have destroyed this country over the next few years, my plan is going to create an economic stimulus, the likes of which, we've really never seen. And we're going to see a lot of corporations get rich, essentially, off of this. And so in terms of, the single payer that we're kind of doing in Washington State, I mean, I kind of saw it coming because we are that state. We are that state that there will be no news around it. Nobody will be talking much about it, but we're still going to legalize gay marriage, and we're still going to legalize weed, and we're still going to make net neutrality happen. And we're going to make a healthcare system happen that helps everybody, because we just have a very intelligent electorate up here.
Great. So we do ask, because and since you seem to be behind it, we do try to encourage anybody who is running, and of course those already sitting, but we don't have as much sway with them right now, to also, when you're going out and campaigning, to also talk about and bring along, we're trying to get it on the ballot. We're gathering signatures now, on a petition, signatures to get it on the ballot. So we need all the help we can get too. So we have
I'll happily sign that.
Yeah, well, we're asking for more than just a signature. we'd like you to go when you're talking to your constituents to talk about it too, and ask for them for their signatures and see if they want to volunteer to gather more signatures.
Yeah,
and
we'll be happy for that as well.
It does connect, that issue with you as well. You're the candidate that's about healthcare that you're. So anyway, if you're at all interested, let me know and we'll get you hooked up with what you need.
Yeah, we'd absolutely be down for that as well.
Thank you.
And I want to point out that if you become an I-1600 drop spot, like not only is your campaign collecting signatures, but you're also welcoming other people in the community to drop off signatures at your campaign office, or then your name is getting out there to everyone who's volunteering at Whole Washington in your area, and it brings people to you. So like we're incentivizing.
Yeah.
Your
Don't worry. No incentive needed. I mean, I'm absolutely down for that, and I'm absolutely willing to help out with that type of thing.
Excellent.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Just so with Washington, the coalition is really is what we are. We're a coalition. We get behind initiatives. It's about policy first. We get behind the initiatives that are along the lines of policies that we're fighting for, and then we get behind the organizations who are fighting for those, and then we get behind the candidates who are again fighting for those to help enact them. So it's a full process. So we're done with talking the talk. We definitely expect our candidates, our representatives that we want to vote in to, like you said, walk that walk, be a doer. Let's do this change together. So thank you for being open for that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I put the link in the description right there, the Collin for Congress 2018 at gmail.com. That is definitely the easiest way to get a hold of us. We check that every single day.
Okay.
It is the best way to communicate with us. Even if you need us to, if you want to send the petition documents so we can print them out here and get physical signatures to you guys, whole 9 yards, all on that email. Let us know. Come talk to us, you guys. Talk to us.
Will do. I'll definitely start, getting those sent your way. Anybody else have any more questions for Collin?
I did, real quick. I don't know if you touched on it earlier. What's your education background?
Oh, yeah, I just touched on it a little bit. So I have a double bachelor's degree in history with an emphasis in American history and English from Western Washington University. I am currently going to get my master's degree in English for teaching.
And then do you have any public service?
No. Well, not exactly, no.
Or volunteer work? Yeah,
exactly. So I've had volunteer work helping out in an assortment of things, but the most prominent one was for the Bernie Sanders campaign. I was a county delegate in Whatcom State, but I unfortunately was disqualified for essentially for a Hillary Clinton supporter. And so that's why I'm very, very much not for the Democratic Party. It was one of those things where they kind of get you on a technicality, which I found very, very frustrating because I was elected by the constituents that I had gone to, the constituents area that they had sent me to, essentially. I was elected from that body to represent them. And so for them to say, well, hey, you're not from here, you can't be here. And it wasn't, by the way, it wasn't even like don't show up to the next thing. It's like, oh, we already found a replacement. Don't worry. You won't have to attend. It was very, very frustrating. And that's when I realized Democratic Party. Something similar,
similar
it was happening all across the U.S.
Yeah.
I was a precinct or a precinct delegate, and it was kind of the same thing, except for it didn't happen at the precinct level or the next level up, the county level, was where all that shenanigans started happening. So yeah. Totally.
Exactly. And so, that was my most prominent, but it was the same thing. I kind of fought on the same issues that I'm talking about now, and got a lot of word out there. I mean, and really that was when I realized, because the room was overwhelmingly progressive. I mean, you guys, I can't stress this enough. Washington State has a very, very intelligent electorate. And I don't think it's just Washington State. I think the American people are much more intelligent than people are giving them credit for. Especially the younger generation.
We just have to inspire them to vote. It's our voter turnout that is dismal.
Exactly. You just have to give them something to vote for. They need to have something to come out for. No, I mean, Clinton and Trump was like a bear trap versus a shotgun in the face type of thing, which is, an analogy that absolutely works for that. And you wonder why nobody was coming out in droves to vote for Hillary. It's like, I'm so sorry. Your husband locked in and imprisoned more people than any other world leader in history. No, you don't get my vote.
Looking at the election, more people were inspired to vote against her.
Yeah, exactly. Because at least with Donald Trump,
everybody I've talked to about that was a Trump voter, that they were more apt to vote against Hillary than to vote for Trump.
Exactly. Because Hillary gave no inches, not an inch to the progressive community. And when the Democrats sat down at the table to create their Democratic platform, the first week was a disaster because she said no to everything that Bernie was about. And guess what? Bernie had the momentum. Bernie had the people's hearts. So when you know, in the first week, terrible impression, bring all these people who their hearts are really into this. They say, look, no, we need to take care of each other. We need a single payer healthcare. And you say no to everything. What do you think is going to happen? That's your base right there. It's literally the stupidest thing. Hillary Clinton was given every opportunity to try to build that base and cater to that crowd. And she intentionally didn't. She intentionally said no. So yeah, of course Trump was going to win because Trump was at least talking about having a single payer healthcare program. Trump was at least talking about having Social Security stay and not be privatized. Trump was at least talking about making trade deals that don't ship our jobs overseas. For how ridiculous the election was, Trump won because he went to Hillary Clinton's left. Hillary lost because she refused to go to the left.
Now we're all seeing that it was all platitudes and BS. But thank you very much, Collin.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for everything and answering all the questions. And I'm pretty sure we're running really late on time. So go ahead, Rhonda, do your thing and let us know where we can reach you. And I really want to advise a website too, by the way.
Yes, when we have money, we'll probably have a website.
There's other avenues too.
Right. Yeah. There are. Yeah, but we will definitely.
Let me know about that in the Gmail account, please, too, by the way.
Yes.
We will.
Yeah, we'll send you information.
You're gonna get a lot more info, buddy.
Yeah, I was about to say, please, you guys.
We will do that. So let's go ahead and let you do a good exit stump here. Say your name, where you're running, how people can help you, and where to find you.
Yes.
Again, I know we've been talking throughout here, but say, this is what I could really use your help. Email me, do it. Set it up.
So do you mind? I have a small message because core message of the campaign. Yes. So we got to talk a little bit more about this. You guys, the number one problem that Americans are facing under the age of 50 is the number one cause of death is a drug overdose. Okay. This has never happened before in the history of this country, but millennials and Generation Xers and the younger as well are literally killing themselves before we're able to get anything to happen. It's killing them more than anything else. The reason that is happening is because it's not because of the drugs. The war on drugs has obviously been an absolute failure, but it's because of the environment that we have created here in the United States. It's because after 1978, for some reason, we stopped investing in our people. We stopped investing in making sure that they have education that's affordable, that they have healthcare that's relevant and affordable, that they have housing that is within a 2 to 10 year salary, things along those lines. And we started investing in the wealthy. We started cutting their taxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When we invest back in people, when we invest our money into the things that people need to grow, to learn, to have a future, to be with each other. We need to teach people how to take care of each other, how to work together. Teamwork environments are so rare to find. When you have a cop that's in a car by himself, that's a problem. When he has no backup, when he has no team around him to help him handle a situation, that's how you get people shot. That's how you get people killed. So we need to use our federal budget. And I can't stress this enough. We're very rich. We are a very, very rich country. We are not a company. Countries are not companies. It's a problem, Donald Trump. But either way, we are very wealthy. And when we use that money the right way, we can solve all of these problems. We can work together to reverse climate change. We can reverse climate change. I know we got past the 400 parts per million for carbon. That's dangerous. So now we are already in a world where we're going to see storms that are more violent than before. That does not mean that it's the end all still. We still have time to turn things around. And with $4 trillion, we can do it. And I don't intend to do this, by 2030, we're going to have all this taken care of. By 2050, we're going to have 2024. The earlier I'm able to get into office and to start pushing these issues, the earlier we can reverse these and start taking care of each other again. Start taking care of the earth that we have around us. It's our imperative. It's our responsibility. You have that kind of money and you have that kind of power. You don't get to piss away responsibility. It's the one thing that has frustrated me about politicians for the last 40 years. They pump money into Wall Street, pump money into the military, while everything else falls by the wayside. Look at our infrastructure. Case and point looking at our infrastructure. Whether you can make money on infrastructure or not, you need to invest in that. That's just something that you do as a country. And we've stopped doing that. We've stopped taking care of things and stopped taking care of each other. We're going to change this. $4 trillion we're going to pump into this. You can find us and you can contact us at collinforcongress2018@gmail.com. You can find us on any social media platform that we're looking to expand. We don't quite have a website open right now, but any of those forums we watch tediously. So please reach out to us and contact us. The Gmail, which once again I'll say, collinforcongress2018@gmail.com. We read everything that happens through there, and we know everything that happens through there. So if you want to be a part of our volunteer groups, later on this day, we're going to post out some of the events that we're going to do throughout April and May. April and May. We're going to have a bunch of events going on in the next 6 weekends that we'll need your help on, because we're on step 1 still. We have a long ways to go. My goal as a congressional candidate is I'm going to keep doing this year after year until we eventually get this out. And we run this as a cooperative. So the more people that are able to help out with this, the faster this will be able to get done. The faster we spread the truth, the faster we spread the love, to use, not to be too cheesy, the sooner we were able to fix the problems that we have, because we can. And anybody who says that we don't have the money for a single payer. We don't have the money for free education. We don't have the money they are just full of shit. Sorry to swear, I do not mean to. But they are just full of it. We do. $4 trillion is not a small amount of money, but I'm going to need your help to be able to get to it. So collinforcongress2018@gmail.com, you guys. Sign up, help out, let me know. Oh, sorry. Probably should let you know where I'm running as well. My name is Collin Richard Carlson, and I am running in Washington's 2nd Congressional District.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream right now, but still stick around if you have a moment.